dark state of raw emotion.
Right, so 4 centimeters start height.
No, she's not really playing with it yet.
Stop it.
I'll be so happy.
So hungry.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for, bro.
You want a Burger King?
Oh my god, amazing.
For me, it was pinkberry, like a gallon of it. What about you?
Thai green curry, so good.
That sounds good. How many of you can relate to this ad? Okay, you don't have to have birthed a human. How many of you felt something watching this? Amazing? That's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to get all up in our feelings. We are here to talk about emotions and the ROI of emotional storytelling and just how important it is. And my speaker notes are not coming up, just FYI, tech friends. Because it's emotions that set us apart as humans, right? It's emotions that allow us to connect with each other. It's emotions that allow us to understand the world around us. And most importantly, it's emotions that allow us to empathize and build those deeper connections, like I hope that we do here today. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for making this your last session of the day. Wonderful introduction. Again, I'm Heather from the Stoke Group, and this is my partner in crime, Catherine, who is going to kick us off.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Catherine White. I'm a senior advisor at AARP's Turnkey Programs. You may have heard of AARP. Maybe you or someone you know has gotten that dreaded invitation to join us. If not, don't worry, it's coming. We're coming for you. No, AARP is an organization that is really focused on empowering people to choose how they live as they age. So we've got a great session today. We've got a lot to get through. By the end of the day, the end of the session, we hope that you will have learned a little bit about how emotional campaigns generate a higher return on investment, really techniques for creative, cohesive narratives across digital platforms, how to identify and extract those powerful emotional stories, and strategies for aligning storytelling with your broader business goals.
Right, so why focus on emotional ROI? A few statistics. Again, I don't have my notes here, so it's hard for me to see what the slides are, if there's any support there. Digital content that elicits strong emotions, as we know, is just better content, but it also drives results. They are 4 times more likely to generate customer impact. We also know that it drives engagement. They're more likely to go viral. Emotional storytelling, emotional content campaigns drives this deeper long-term brand equity, which of course leads to sales, which we all want. But I want to go back to this idea of brand equity, because that's really the key here. That is central to emotional ROI, is building that deeper connection with your customers, your clients, your audience, is this idea of brand equity. Because it's brand equity that is what creates that bond, which creates not just loyal customers, but customers that become an extension of your own marketing team.
So we talked about brand reputation. You know, that strong reputation drives 88% of consumers to trust recommendations from people they know. So word of mouth marketing is critical. Integrity and values. You gotta stand for something, right? Brands that align with consumer values are 2 times more likely to grow in brand equity. Connectivity. Simply put, all of us as humans want to have a genuine connection. And we can for sure tell when someone's not being genuine. And finally, trust. This is the most valuable currency we have in marketing. Trusted companies outperform their peers by up to 400%. And 91% of all consumers will purchase from a brand that they trust. Trust is the foundation of emotional ROI.
Trust is an important term. I want you to think of another one as well, which is loyalty. Here's a traditional marketing funnel. Looks familiar? Yes? To everybody? We see awareness at the top, and then we gently ease our customers down into the loyalty phase, or depending on your campaign or how quickly you need to convert them, you not just shove them down that funnel. But I want to think about this a little bit differently. Within the context of emotional ROI, we want to consider flipping the funnel and actually thinking about loyalty as our very first touch point. Because when we do that, we start to build brand equity from the outset. We start to build that relationship as the foundation rather than the end goal. And that is how we are really building our powerful brand ambassadors. Because when we start with trust rather than awareness, we get closer to what we want. And this is so important because most of our customers are already customers, right? They're coming back to us because they like our brand, they like our products, they like our services, they like us as people, right? And those loyal customers are coming back to buy more. They're also going to spend more. They're going to buy that new upgrade. They're going to buy the new product, the new version, because you've built that trust with them, with that brand equity. So I feel really fortunate in putting this presentation together, talking to some creative and marketing leaders to get their insights and expertise about this topic. This is Adam Morgan. He is the VP of brand at Twilio. He also wrote a book called Sorry Spock, Emotions Drive Business, and it's all about the brain science behind emotions and how that really compels people to act. And so he's gonna give us some of his wisdom. He's also the host of the Real Creative Leadership podcast, if you wanna look that up.
So here's the thing, in today's environment, there are so many companies that are so focused on results, right? And so in that rush to get good data, we often forget the emotional need. The way humans interact with the world around them is an emotional experience. And when we look at the science behind it, it's because as we're making memories, we lock down memories in our, the back of our brains with emotions. And the stronger the emotion, the greater chance we have of remembering and locking down a memory trace. And so if you're trying your best to connect with customers and have brand loyalty, then having a highly charged emotional experience will create a stronger and longer lasting memory, which is exactly what we want. We want to burn our brand into their brains, and the only way to do that is through emotion. And one of my favorite quotes is that we're so busy measuring public opinion, we forget we can create it.
I love that. We can create the public opinion, but we can also create the connection. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to go through a few different case studies to really show some brands that we love and are close to, some examples that we think is really strong emotional ROI.
So AARP is one of those case studies. At AARP, we are really focused on human connection. We're a consumer-focused organization, and we serve the more than 100 million adults aged 50 plus nationwide. Our goal is really to help these adults navigate key life decisions and navigate them with confidence. That can be taking care of your own health, caring for someone you love, finding work that's meaningful to you, or reaching retirement. Trust is critical in all of those moments as you're making those decisions. And the Turnkey Programs team, my team, we deliver in-person and virtual events, education, and resources to help adults navigate through those very moments. But we had a problem. The problem was we were not telling our story very well. We had tons of data, we had spreadsheets of it, we had complicated charts, but we didn't have emotion. So we partnered with Stoke, and that was the first thing we went after. We looked for those really valuable, really meaningful human testimonials. So we interviewed folks who came to our events, and we really tried to get to what was going on in their lives. really bring their life and their stories to life. We really wanted to paint the whole picture of who they are, so where they were coming from, what they were concerned about, and where they were going. And then really, in identifying those stories, tried to see how they were connected to others. You know, everybody's story is unique, but it connects to so many more, millions more. We also really wanted to show the journey that our members go through and really look at the impact of those touch points. So things like, what were they feeling? What were they worried about? What did they want to accomplish? And then how did our programming from AARP help them meet those goals in that moment? So this campaign was really focused on internal stakeholders. At AARP, those are executives who are managing budgets, holding the purse strings. Our team really wasn't getting the credit we deserved because we weren't doing the best job of telling our story in a way that showed human connection and the impact on human lives. But as you can see, a lot of our data is really good. It's really all about the impact on lives. In fact, 92% of those who attended our programs said they learned something that they would use to make a decision in their life. That's incredible. And further, we realized that our programs were really driving not only satisfaction, but brand loyalty. So a majority of our consumers said that after attending our program, they were more satisfied and more loyal to our brand. And I'd like to really introduce Jesse Salinas, the VP of Turnkey Programs at AARP, to say more.
The last few years, AARP has moved away from predominantly output focused to more of an outcome based approach. So we've been trying to understand not just the scale of our work, but what does it mean? What are consumers doing? Numbers can feel very antiseptic, but being able to talk about some of the consumers who benefited from our programs, specifically the decisions or actions that they've taken from our programs, kind of makes the work more relevant. It highlights the value of that work, because we think about the work, outputs and outcomes. Stories really grow and help define what those outputs and outcomes actually mean. That's really important because it gives it a human value.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Catherine. It's been so great working with this team. When we first started our engagement, I had the opportunity to go to some of the turnkey programs for research, right? But I quickly became a participant. I went to a caregiving workshop, and it really brought back memories of when my father passed. We weren't prepared, didn't have resources, and anybody who's been through that knows how chaotic it can be. It can be emotionally chaotic. The paperwork is a mess. And as I was sitting there listening to these amazing facilitators and learning about resources, I felt so lucky that I'll be prepared for anyone else in my life that might need these resources, that I can share it with my family members. And I also felt lucky that I was in the position to help tell the story of the work that Turnkey does, right, as a marketer. And this campaign is different than some of the other ones that you'll see today. It's not a big, splashy video campaign. It's not an out-of-home billboard. It was an internal campaign, PowerPoint deck, a few different infographics that went to the executive leadership team that approves the budgets to allow for these programs to exist, right? So when we're talking, I was experiencing the emotional ROI in real time of the programming of the Turnkey program. And then we were telling the story of the impact. So it was a real full circle moment. And so as marketers, we often tell the stories of brands and we project it outward. But we also are responsible for telling our own stories as well. So this felt like a really nice reflective moment, and I hope you guys picked up on that. And so their emotional ROI is brand reputation, which of course is critical. Every generation aligns with a brand that aligns with their own values, right? If they have a good reputation across generations, as you can see, people are gonna pick that brand. Reputation plus loyalty equals that evangelism that we're talking about. And when you are loyal to a brand, you tell people about it. You want to tell your friends about Pinkberry. It's really good froyo, right? And you know, the toppings are always fresh. I've never had a moldy strawberry. So I go back, I get my card punched. And word of mouth is the most powerful marketing that there is. And so this idea of emotional ROI, of flipping the funnel and starting with loyalty, is building that extended team, right? That extended team of marketers who's doing the work for you, which, I mean, sign me up. Get me some free interns. Sounds good. So here's our next case study. Another call and response. How many of you flew Delta? Few. How many of you always fly Delta? Same group. So Delta has an amazing reputation as a brand. They have worked years, probably decades, on this reputation, and they're in a really great spot. They just built this really cool executive lounge at LAX that I can't wait to check out. But Delta discovered another problem that had nothing to do with how many flights that they were booking, how many trips that they were selling, and it was really about their alignment with the values of their brand. So the marketing team discovered, in looking at all of the stock assets that were available to them, it didn't represent who they were. They were putting campaigns together and just searching through all of the assets, and a lot of you who deal with stock image libraries will understand where I'm going with this. They faced a challenge, and I'm gonna just go to the next slide and see if you guys could identify what the challenge was. Everyone's in pastel, right? That's it, right? No, it's so homogenous. Not just that they all look like they could be my cousin, but these are not authentic experiences. I've been to the airport with my family countless times. I'm never smiling, never. And I don't hold my husband's hand on the beach. Are you kidding me? I'm under an umbrella with a book. So these are not authentic. This does not represent the world. This does not represent the values of Delta or the audience that it serves. And so they partnered with Adobe to build a completely free asset library in Adobe Stock of travel images that represented the world. And they shared it. They shared it with the travel industry. It's open to all, and I'm going to show you their campaign.
This is Egypt, 1973. This is the Hill family visiting Egypt. And the songs. This is the songs in South Africa. And the Silvas. Well, only Miguel was a Silva then, but soon Maria was too. You may not have seen these travelers represented before, so we're expanding our visual library for the travel industry to use. Because when you're out there seeing the world should see you.
Pretty great, right? And so they didn't do this to sell more tickets from Salt Lake to Barbados, but they sold more tickets from Salt Lake to Barbados, right? And this ad also ranked top 5% of US TV ads almost overnight. And they started to get statistics like more people were calling them the brand that they love or the brand that shares my values. And as we've been seeing, building that connection, aligning your values with your audience, that is what creates that loyalty and that brand equity and that emotional ROI that builds that reputation. And so this was a project that they took on that didn't have an immediate financial gain, business impact, but it did, right, for the long game. So that was their emotional ROI of integrity and values. And as we know, that matters. It matters to consumers, and authenticity builds brands. And so I was able to talk to Ronnie Monty from Adobe, and she is going to underscore this point of why authenticity matters, particularly for global
when
brands.
you put the people that you're serving at the center of what you're doing, it really punctuates and brings to life who we are and what we stand for. We're putting our money where our mouth is, right, in terms of really illustrating what that looks like in the real world. And trust is such a sacred commodity these days in terms of trust between the brand and our audience. And so campaigns that illustrate DE&I is a beautiful way to maintain and establish and maintain trust, because it's reflecting our values. It helps people get behind who you are, right? People buy from people who they like. And so this notion of emotional ROI, I believe, is available to any corporation, any entity. But the way you access it is through your customers and ultimately through your employees as well. Leverage your strongest assets, which isn't your product, which isn't your infrastructure. It's the people you serve.
I love that. You got to engage your entire consumer base, and that's something we're focused on at AARP. We have millions of members. They all have their own story. They all have their own journey, and we're trying to connect with them.
Okay, this is our last case study, and this is our last call and response from the audience, which I know you're loving. Thank you for your participation. How many of you have heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Good readership. You guys are all well read. The punchline's not going to work out very well for me. How many of you have heard of Franklin Covey, the business? Fewer. Okay. So you've heard of the 7 Habits, so that's great. So Franklin Covey is a global leadership company. They work with some of the biggest organizations, training them up on how to work alone, how to work together, those soft skills like emotional intelligence, all the things we need to know to grow in our careers that they don't teach, right, in business school or in your HR training. And that company was founded upon the 7 Habits book, which is 35 years old, right? But it's still the #1 best-selling business book of all time today, 35 years later. A little bit dated, right? They faced the biggest challenge I think the company's ever faced in this global relaunch campaign of the 7 Habits. They wanted to appeal to a new audience, a younger audience, a global audience, an audience that probably hasn't heard of this book or the company or the brand. And so how do they do that? You know, all of these great success metrics don't mean anything if you can't influence the generation of influencers, right? So what do you think they leaned into in this global relaunch campaign? Any guesses? And you're wearing orange. Did you get a swag bag? Get this man a swag bag. Thank you. Yeah, they leaned into emotions. So we're going to show just a part of this.
So the 7 Habits principles changed my life. In 1991, I was in the middle of the season, I was at the bottom of a deep hole of victimization, depression, anxiety. I mean, it was just terrible. Every expectation, everything that I did wasn't good enough.
I found myself really kind of jumping from one fire to the next, one crisis to the next. And so I just found myself really kind of unfulfilled, kind of worn out, burned out.
Because there's like so much anxiety, right? Like in school now we have tests and we have all these, like this pressure, and like we forget like they're just kids. Like they not only need to learn how to do math and English and science and music, but they also need to learn how to be human.
When we start the business, initially it's very task-based. You know, get this done, get that done. You cannot just tell people what to do. They have to think for themselves. Leadership is about developing yourself first.
I was shown that it could be completely different. And I remember my earth just shifted like that, you know, completely 180. And in 1992, the season, I only say this just to kind of make it more clear to you, I was MVP of the NFL. From the deepest hole to, like, how does that happen? It happens as you take in the 7 Habits and the vulnerability and you start this process. That's how it happens.
It's a 4-minute campaign video. We're not going to play the whole thing, but you'll get it in the deck. They leaned into human story, something any of us can relate to. The Stoke team had the opportunity to work on this campaign with Franklin Covey, and we traveled across the country multiple times talking to teachers who were struggling to motivate their students and then motivate themselves because it was an underfunded school. They were charged with standing up a music program with no instruments. How do you do that? How do you find the motivation to apply for enough grants to get instruments for everybody? Talking to individuals struggling with addiction. How do you get yourself out of that, right? Talking to business leaders whose teams are growing, who now have leaders of a different generation and they don't know how to lead them. How do you manage that? How do you manage yourself to manage new managers? And then some dude named Steve Young, who you think, he doesn't have any problems, he's fine, he's got the ultimate platform, he's given every opportunity, but he's in his own way. He couldn't get past his own block. And so this campaign tells the stories of how the 7 Habits in different ways, whether it was the book or the course or meeting Stephen R. Covey, impacted them, right? And so these are human stories, and that's what's relatable. That's the connectivity, and that's what builds trust. And that's what any brand can do. If you lean into emotional ROI, if you lean into that brand equity and real human narrative, that's how you build that trust.
Right. So as we saw with AARP, with Delta, and with Franklin Covey, trust pays off. Let's take it from, oops, I'm going the wrong way.
There's a couple, yeah.
There we go. Take it from Laurie Lohner, marketing leader, entrepreneur, and managing partner of the Stoke Group.
The ultimate goal of any campaign is to drive action. And storytelling drives action by being able to share the emotions, by having the value, by building the trust. That leads to action, and that leads to a lifelong customer. That human element is what builds empathy. It's what fosters trust. And when customers can see themselves in a brand story, they're far more likely to trust it. And so even though that may feel like a soft, non-tangible, that is a buying obstacle that has to be checked off. That's the opportunity that we have. And honestly, that's our responsibility as marketers.
Boom. It's our responsibility as marketers, as humans, to connect with other people. That's why we're here on this planet. I truly believe that, to connect with other people. And how lucky are we that it's our job to do that for work, to tell stories, to connect with people, to build trust, to empathize, to hear someone else's story, right? So go out there, take that responsibility, because emotional ROI, it makes better creative, it builds deeper relationships, and it's just good business.
It's really smart business, actually.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you sticking with us through the technical difficulties. I don't know if we don't have time for Q&A, but find us on LinkedIn, find me in the hallways. If you didn't get swag, it's not my fault. Have a great rest of your conference.